Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, it was a weekend. That's the word, the phrasing I will use for our Cincinnati Redlegs, but how are you in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of relaxed and content right here, just not giving my time and energy to the Reds, watching the games, but not getting my hopes up and down with the roller coaster that is the Cincinnati Reds. And excited, we got college football this weekend, so I have a lot of other things to cheer for, including bets and that. And the Reds will just have to keep on watching them, but I don't really expect much of them. We saw this past week with the fun start, but the terrible finish.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate to say the least. We'll get into the question of the day, Joe. What will it take? And you guys can let us know, comments below or on the Twitter account. What will it take for David Bell to be fired? And should the whole front office go? Let us know. We've had conversations about David Bell before. I don't know that we need to dive too much deeper into that at this point, but I would like to know what other people are feeling because I almost lost it when Fernando Cruz went back out there on Friday night. You got a very disappointed text from me, Joe. I literally, the minute that fourth run went up, it was me, my girlfriend, and my parents at this game, and we had great seats. 129, section 129, like right there down the first baseline. And I'm like, okay, it's a pretty good game. Like the Reds are battling, Lorenzen's pitching a great game. Martinez was mostly pitching a great game, like not an amazing game, but a great game still, like another quality start for him. And Cruz comes out, has a great inning, and then he gives up that fourth run. And we'll go through all of the recaps, but that was it for me with David Bell, Joe. That was it right there. Like that was what did it for me was seeing him come back out again. And I was like, there's just no reason for him to be back out there. And it ultimately cost them, I think, substantially. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it. So, yeah, that was officially it. That I'm officially off the train for David Bell. Like I had maybe had a toe on still, Joe, but my toe has been removed.
I'm glad you're getting to this point, buddy, because now we agree a little bit. Number one, but two, you've been riding that emotional roller coaster. I've been saying it with the Reds this year. You've been riding it with David Bell. Like I don't know, maybe he still has it, which I think is a credit to your understandability of people. But now you can maybe just you can maybe want to have David Bell fired, but can relax in knowing that nothing's going to change tomorrow. So that's
Yeah.
you can kind of wait until the offseason to really get your pitchfork out and start demanding some changes.
Oh, it will happen. I will be pitchforking this offseason, Joe. But we head into the recaps. It started off great for the Reds. 6-1 win over the hated Cardinals. Andrew Abbott pitched a hell of a game. And the Reds were able to get to Sonny Gray early. Spencer Steer specifically with two big home runs. Ellie also with a massive home run. Jacob Junis came in and shut it down for the rest of the game. You only had to use two pitchers that game. So especially with what happened later this week, that was great. A really good sign for the Reds. Then a 4-1 win. The Reds went up 4-0. Hunter Green pitched another just spectacular game, Joe. 8 strikeouts, only the one home run given up to Nolan Arenado. Tony Santillan and Alexis Diaz came in, and I looked at that game and I said, wow, that's a complete game from the Cincinnati Reds. Ty France with a big home run, Candy with a home run, TJ Friedel with a couple hits. This is what I was wanting to see out of this Reds team. You have a good starter that goes 6-7 innings. You have your setup guy, which I think Tony Santillan may be that guy now, Joe, in my mind. And Diaz came in and absolutely just shut them down. They got to Erick Fedde, who had been struggling since coming over to the Cardinals, and everything looked great. Everything looked even better when you head into the Wednesday game. The Reds win 9-2 on a bullpen day, Joe. After only using 3 bullpen pitchers the first 2 games, everybody else got in. Emilio Pagan came back with 2 big innings for the Reds. Only 2 hits given up, 1 strikeout. Sam Moll gets the win. Carson Spires didn't look great. They had to pull him after only 2 2/3 innings. I think they were hoping he would go a little longer. But at that point, the Reds were up 7-2 and they just didn't want to mess around. But Indy with 2 big mammoth home runs. He was hitting the crap out of the ball off of Kyle Gibson. Ty Steve also with a home run, and Friedel had 2 major home runs as well. Reds, again, put together a great series. First time they had swept the Cardinals, I think, since 2017. So, couldn't ask for more than that. You head into the Friday game, and Joe and I both agreed. We said 2 out of 3 would be great. 1 of 2 would maybe keep them in this. As I alluded to, the Friday game, Joe, it was a close game. I was there, really. They got to Lorenzen early. It was really unfortunate. Ellie hits an absolute shot to first base, and Indy gets doubled up after getting a leadoff hit. Lorenzen wasn't sharp initially, but he was getting some weak contact later on, and the Reds just couldn't capitalize on the walks from him. But Ty Steve did come up with a big, huge double to bring the Reds within 2. And as I said, Fernando Cruz came in, great 8th inning, 9th inning, total collapse. Ends up giving up the run, and then they walk Bobby Witt Jr., and Vinny Pasquantino hits a 3-run home run with 2 outs to pretty much seal it. Bobby Witt Jr. also is amazing to watch in person. That home run that he hit, the 430 shot, you could tell, it's one of the smoothest swings I've seen in person in a very long time. It was pretty outstanding, to say the least. And I believe he did it with the Pablo Sanchez bat in that game, Joe. So that was also fun with Players Weekend. But not fun for the Reds. Like I said, the minute that 4th run went up there in the 9th, I said, well, this one is over. And so we left the game in the top of the 9th because as we were walking out, we also heard the 3-run home run, and I knew even more so that I had made the right choice to leave. There was no reason to be there. I'm also 0 for 3 in games this year, so you can count 3 of those losses to me personally, Joe. I've got 1 more in September. I'm hoping that will be the winner, but we'll see. I may be 0 for 4 this season in games attended. The Saturday game was just a disaster from the start. Nick Lodolo, one of his worst outings. His ERA has jumped to a 4.55, Joe. His ERA has raised almost 2 full runs since the All-Star break. So at this point, they just need warm bodies, I think, in the rotation, but he has got to figure something out. He went from being elite to being just straight up bad, and it's because he cannot find that slider. A 13-1 loss. Thanks, Candy, for a meaningless home run for your 20th to at least make it not a shutout. But Lodolo, Buck Farmer, and Sam Moll all struggled. Everybody else was fine through the rest of the game, but it was, a 10-0 game by the 3rd inning, and did not matter after that. So you head into the Sunday game, Joe. Brady Singer, the big boy, versus Andrew Abbott, and Abbott struggled. Not horribly, but more we're just seeing he and Lodolo are breaking down. We talked about this last week, Joe. It was not great. Somehow this Darian Blanco kid comes to Cincinnati and hits 3 home runs, including a grand slam. Kind of wild to me to see their 9-hitter who had not hit at all basically all season comes to Cincinnati and has the Reds killer type of game. Indy with a hit for an RBI, but the rest of the team really just didn't hit. And Casey Legumina brought up and gives up 4 runs in the 9th inning again. So an absolute routing both ways this week, Joe, on both of those teams down there in the Missouri, Kansas area. Just wild to me. I knew the Royals were a pretty solid team. Obviously, they're 14 games over 500. But I would have thought that we would have put up a little bit more of a fight than we did. And it just feels like like they're 6 games out now. You know, you win one of these games, you're at least in a little bit of a better spot. But Joe, it's tough. It's tough out here. I mean, literally just winning one game keeps them probably in the hunt. And the fact that they got beat, let me see here, it was 28-3 in terms of runs scored. Yeah, we were all worried about that run differential. Well, that just got obliterated in this series. We are now down to a plus 30 run differential just from this series alone. And like I said, 6 games back in the wild card. So huge bummer to say the least.
Yeah, it was a up and down week, as you mentioned. Some Reds fans got optimistic after the Cardinals series, and I don't blame you, but to me it was the same old team, same issues. A lot of home runs going out, and that's great. Our offense thrives when our home runs are being hit, but we cannot do that consistently. We've shown that all year. It's just not something is built into our DNA. And that's why I didn't really buy into them doing much against the Royals, especially because we have the second fewest wins against teams above 500 in the whole league, and the second most, the least amount of wins against top 500 teams or better is the White Sox. So we are, all these stats I've said the last couple of weeks, the most games with 3 or fewer hits, besides the White Sox, besides the White Sox last week, I mentioned that stat. We're right down there with the White Sox with all these hitting stats and all these, playing good team stats, and that's not where you want to be for a team that is rebuilding, to say the least, as they are confirmed to have a 100-loss season already. So that's not great. On top of that, I feel like the Cardinal series went well with the pitching. The Royal series did not. And I like what you said about the warm bodies for pitching. I think we are running on fumes. We're going to talk about the Hunter Green injury here soon. Lodolo always getting over these injuries. I don't think he looks comfortable whatsoever. And I think it is injuries. I just want to see him be healthy and see what he can do for a full season. I don't know if we're going to get that reality. Abbott seems like he's wearing down at the end of the year like he did last year. I mentioned, like, big picture, I'm not really worried about those guys. But I think there's a lot of pressure on them. And I do think that, if you wanted to win, then I think keeping Frankie Montas was the correct move. I did not want to win. I wanted to go sell. But he has brought his ERA to a 4.86 down with the Brewers. Not that that's great, but he's eating innings for them in a way that they actually went out and acquired him to eat innings because they were having injuries with their starting pitching. And now I feel like we're having guys who are the pressure of having to be 3 young guys leading this team and injuries and everything else. There's a lot of pressure on these guys, and I think they're wearing down. So that's like one of those things where it's like, oh, we're giving these guys a chance to compete by all our deadline deals. No, you're not. You're trading Frankie Montas. He could have had eaten some innings and not. Let me be clear. He has not had all the great success with the Brewers. He's had some bad outings too. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather have a veteran on the staff there to help him out, especially when, we've had so many injured pitchers and we're going on bullpen days. Carson Spire's still a big part of the rotation, which I don't think should be the future. That's just some things to think about here when I do think that this is kind of by design that we're losing these games when we've shipped guys off who could really help us. But that's what the Reds have done this last couple of years, and this is what they've done this season, is go on the roller coaster up and down and kind of stay in the middle at the trade deadline and not do much. So that's what we're stuck with.
I will fully admit my red alert button is on for both Abbott and Lodolo, to be honest with you. What I'm seeing from them in terms of their decision-making, the amount of, like, Lodolo, the fact that he can't get over a blister and be able to find his slider is detrimental. He has got to be, like, I get the other injuries, and I know blisters are not fun. But if he can't even throw that pitch, and that pitch is that, detrimental to his arsenal, like if he just can't find it otherwise, then I really think that they need to be having a very long conversation with him about what he does in this offseason, because he needs to get in insane shape or something like that. He needs to put on some serious muscle to try to help and recover his body quicker, to make up for times when the rest of his body may be failing him at other times. Like we see it with Joe Burrow right now. I'm so out on this season. I'm already wearing my Bengals stuff on this podcast, to be clear. Joe, I think that Lodolo is a good player. I think he's a good dude, but um, I would like to remind people as well that let me see here. He is already 26 years old. So it's not like he's like a young guy anymore. Like he'll be 27 by the time the season starts. I know it's still technically young, but like when you look at guys like Abbott, Green, Ellie, like is Lodolo going to still be able to be a part of this team by the time we're really expecting them to roll around? I think yes, obviously. I think that seems like a pretty obvious answer when I'm expecting them to compete next year and the year after. But when this team's really in its core, if this guy cannot stay healthy, it worries me. It worries me a little bit, to be honest. And with Abbott too, like the fact that he is giving up so many home runs scares me. It scares me quite a bit because all it takes for his ERA to balloon to like a 5 is one walk or one hit before he gives up half these home runs. And he is faltering big time down the stretch. He went from not giving up more than 2 runs in like a bunch of starts to now feels like every game is 4 runs. Like it's literally doubled. So it is worrying to me. I also will say I am very concerned with the training staff, not even just the coaching staff, but the training staff on this team. When we have players like Abbott pitched mostly a full season last year, he should not be having this much of an issue again this year. Lodolo can't seemingly come back. Brandon Williamson, where has he been? Like, why hasn't he had a surgery yet? Like, I don't remember seeing if he has or not, but like he was supposed to still be working his way back. Like Matt McLean having a freaking oblique injury and a rib cage injury, like while he's getting ready to come back to games. Like, what is this training staff doing at this point, Joe, to where it's our guys are getting hurt constantly again? Ian Jabot, same thing. Like he also has been hurt again, like trying to come back multiple times. Friedel gets hurt 3 times this season. Like, it can't just be bad luck at one point, Joe. That's what I'm trying to get at here is my red alert signs are on for Lodolo and Abbott right now. I still think that they will be ultimately fine, but they are going to have a very reflective moment, a come into Jesus type moment this offseason. This whole team will. And I believe that the two of them will as well, because Lodolo is going to have to do what I think Hunter Green did. He needs another pitch. He just has to find another pitch, because if you're relying on one pitch to the I think degree that Lodolo is, and you're not able to have it that day, you're never going to be an elite starter. You instantly go down to a 4 or a 5 starter. Hunter Green has found when his fastball's not on, he has 3 other pitches now that he can make work. You've seen him make that step. These guys have to take those next steps if this team is going to succeed. And again, my light's on, but that's not because I don't believe they can do it, but it's because the urgency to make it happen for next year and the year after needs to happen. And again, I want to say, again, this training staff needs to have the biggest look in the mirror, the biggest come into Jesus moment, because this team, I've never seen so many injuries, like repeated injuries in my entire life. And it's unacceptable to me if they can't figure it out with their training program. It's just wild to me, truly.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing with the training staff for me is just that the injuries are like minor ones, and then all of a sudden we find out a week later that it's a major one, and that's just like
that too.
I don't know what's going on. That's like the bigger issue for me. I mean, obviously all the injuries happening isn't good, but that's the one thing we do know is like we don't know how the players are, if they're injury prone, like all that stuff. We do know that like the information changes from what we get, and that's not necessarily the best thing. I'll say this because we did talk about even some trade deadline acquisitions like Joey Wiemer that I guess some people are still holding out hope for. I'm kind of, especially he's batting like 216 or something in AAA. He's 24. So like I think because Lodolo has shown something in his first couple of years, I have hope that if he is healthy, he can continue to be a solid pitcher. Now, the dream of having 3 aces at the top of your rotation, maybe like the early 2000s A's, maybe that's kind of dead for some people. I still think we can have 3 solid starting pitchers out of these guys. I do want to see Lodolo go without injuries. I do think his undoing is going to be injuries. I don't think it's just the blister. I think how many injuries are just piling up, and that just changes your body and changes how comfortable you are pitching. Abbott, again, just still a contact pitcher. He's still learning how to avoid home runs, but I'm kind of glad they're getting this experience this year when since end of June, I don't think I've been ready to compete. This is like, hey, let's build and let's get better. And in a lot of ways, these guys have gotten better. We mentioned Hunter Green being a superstar right now, even though he's hurt. Andrew Abbott, I think he is learning this year as opposed to last year how to hopefully go deeper in the season. We're going to see how that holds up over the last month here, but hopefully go in deeper in the season. And Lodolo, again, I just want him to stay healthy, and I do think there could be 3 solid pitchers on the staff. But what this does, Rob, is all the people who thought, oh, these are 3 aces. This again necessitates next offseason, this upcoming offseason. Go and get an ace. Hunter Green can be your ace on the staff, that's fine. But if you want to win a World Series, you need 2 elite pitchers. Now, I do think if you have Hunter Green and you go sign a very good free agent pitcher who has some experience, who can win, 15 to 20 games, has an ERA around 3 or lower, that is a good start. And then you have Abbott and Lodolo behind them. Those guys are solid pitchers. Even at Lodolo's 4.55 ERA, still better than what we had with Frankie Montas, still better than what we had with Graham Ashcraft. It's not looking good right now, but he's shown he can do a lot better. And then you go have people compete for that 5th spot, I think is the ideal thing, whether it's Williamson or Ashcraft or whoever. This just, they're kind of, yes, like there are concerns, but this just changes the offseason plan, I think, for the Reds. Whereas, a month ago, people might have been thinking that you don't need to add a great pitcher. I always think that because when you get to the playoffs, you're going to need to play teams like the Dodgers who have a million pitchers. But that is where I've kind of gone from is like these guys, we went from Hunter Green. I think we're finding our ace, Abbott and Lodolo might be 3 or 4 starters in the rotation. That's very good. Maybe not the top end that we thought they were going to be, but you can go sign a second starter. You can go sign another ace to pair with Hunter Green. And that will be something I'm trying to hold the Reds to this year. Not Frankie Montas coming off an injury, not any of the guys they've signed in the past to kind of be a starting pitcher for us. I want someone who, if he's not a star, at least a guy who's pitched well for a couple seasons and has some experience and help lead the staff. And honestly, in the dog days of August, maybe eat some innings for us so that some of these guys don't have so much pressure. Maybe have the experience of going on a playoff run so that they can kind of like teach them the way and show them a little bit. So that's what I think this last couple of weeks have done for me for Abbott and Lodolo is just kind of maybe resetting expectations of what these guys can be and will be. It's not going to be the 90s Braves pitchers here, I don't think, especially with the injuries, but it can still be a good, solid rotation with these 3 guys being a big part of it.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I was just looking and seeing if there's anything down in AAA. You were giving Joey Wiemer a lot of credit, actually. He is 3 for 37 to start off his career down in Louisville. So a .081 batting average. The guy who actually did the best is Brandon Williamson, and I think he was finding it last season, and he may end up being the better TCU guy if Lodolo can't figure it out. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think it should be the 2 of them battling it out for a spot in the rotation next year. If Brandon Williamson can find his way to being healthy as well. I think truly, it's going to sound really bad, but I think that injury and Connor Phillips, like just massive blow up, because I was checking his stats up until this year were outstanding. So clearly his is maybe a mental thing. I'm wondering if he just has the yips after a bad start. Maybe an off season will refresh him. But like, I think the Williamson injury, like we thought, hey, he'll be back. Like that's good. If he had been healthy, I think he may have helped this team a lot more than we realize. I think almost significantly helped this team because then you have Nick Martinez still in the bullpen, so you can use him in more high leverage situations. Like I think he's giving you a quality start more times than not. I'm not the biggest Brandon Williamson guy, but what he showed me in the back half of last year and in the 3 games that he pitched for Louisville, he was amazing. Like truly very, very good. Like he was twirling it up there. So it's a big bummer. I'm not, even though I'm the one with the red light on, Joe, I'm not out on them having an elite rotation. Not yet. I think that if they can make the similar jump that Hunter Green did in terms of from, the amount of starts that Hunter's had comparatively to both of them, which they will hit sometime next year, I think that would be enough for me to say, like, we'll know by next year if they're going to be those guys. And I think that they can make that jump. It's just that for me, it has to be with a sense of urgency. I want to see them go in this offseason with a plan to how they are going to fix some of these problems, because it just can't happen. Like, you just can't be like, hey, we've got this great young pitching staff, but well, one guy gives up a solo home run like literally every single game so far this season, and the other guy can't stay healthy, and then that same guy that gives up the home runs also falls off at the end of the season, almost to the point of where you just shouldn't even start him until June. You know, like it's getting to that kind of a point for me. So I want to see them go in. Like, I want to see Abbott work on his what's it called? His ability to be in better shape, right? Like, to be able to make it through the season, whether that's strength training, whether that's endurance training. That's where I was looking for. I want to see his endurance increase for next year. And then for Lodolo, I want to see him put on some muscle in maybe areas that he's never really thought about, so that he doesn't get random injuries in his freaking legs or in his arms that aren't like necessarily detrimental, but they're not able to get things done. So I want to see those things happen. I think we are going to have a very interesting route to the rotation next year. I'll put it that way, Joe. I think there are going to be a lot of people vying for, like you said, 3 spots. And if the Reds are serious about winning, they should go out and get somebody 100%. Somebody reliable.
Yeah, I'm a little bit different than you. I think all 3 of these guys are still virtual locks, unless there's something really bottoms out or another Lodolo injury pops up, which, I mean, I guess we should maybe expect at this point. I think they're virtual locks to be in the rotation, but that makes next year push up or show up or push. I can't even say it. Yeah, push. Yeah, you can say the word for me.
I got you.
Yeah, it's time to prove yourself next season if that happens, and that necessitates having Graham Ashcraft back, having Brandon Williamson back, fighting for that 5th spot in the rotation, hopefully signing another pitcher to go with those guys. But then you have a little bit more depth, and maybe Rhett Lauder, who's pitching well right now, at that point is able to come up. Maybe Chase Burns is ready. You know, I'll take, if one of the Wake Forest guys turns out great, one of the TCU guys turns out great, I'll take that 50-50 split on those, and we'll have a pretty good rotation. But that's how I kind of see it, is like those guys will be in the rotation to start next year. I think all 3 of those guys. The last 2 spots, hopefully free agent, hopefully someone else vies for that last spot. But I don't think this like lets you off the hook in terms of the front office, in terms of like, hey, let's go get a guy. Let's go get that guy to be the number 2 starter behind Hunter Green, and then see where we're at from there. So, yeah, it's definitely concerning, definitely things that they all need to work on. But, I mean, we got to remember, you know, Abbott still – pitchers do have longer careers than hitters for the most part. Abbott's in his 2nd season. You know, Lodolo, bits and pieces of a couple seasons. Yeah. Hunter Green finally pitched the most out of all of them at this point, and he's finally getting to his potential. So there's a chance that they figure it out this offseason. I do think they have that chance to start the year in the rotation. But you're right, there's 2 open spots for next year, and I'm excited to see what happened with those 2 open spots. And then if your red alert goes right and maybe or goes wrong, I guess, in a way to put it, one of those other spots might be open too. But I'm going to hold that for now and say, hey, they're having bad times right now. I'm not going to give up on them yet, and you're not either.
No, yeah.
But I think there are going to be three rotation spots taken, and those last 2 have to be filled. Which I'm excited to see how that might play out.
Yeah, I'm expecting them both to be there, to be clear, but I think that there needs to be a fire lit under them to do it. And it's not to say that they're, to be very clear before we move on, because I think this wasn't even on our script to talk about, honestly. I'm not saying that they are incapable of doing so, or that they are lazy or anything else. I'm sure they work very hard during the offseason. I'm just saying there needs to be a pointed, very specific things that they have to work on, because I think we are seeing what it is right now. And I think for both of them, to be honest with you, I think strength would do a lot for both of them, to be honest with you. Because like I said, even last week, I'd love to see Abbott get a tick up on his fastball. He's still young enough to where you can do that for sure with a little bit of extra muscle. And I think a little bit of extra muscle would help Lodolo be a little bit more healthy as well. That's literally what we just saw Joe Burrow do, and he's doing it so he can take more hits. Lodolo, we're just needing it so that he can support the other ligaments and stuff in his body. That is like a normal known thing. Like if you have ligament issues, or if you have like injury proneness, adding more muscle will help you from, keep from doing that. And I'm not saying you add enough to where you can't pitch the normal way that you pitch. I'm saying you add enough to where it's going to help protect you and give you a little bit more longevity for Lodolo. And it will help to give Abbott, I think, that little extra bit that he needs for his strikeout potential, and also will help him to be able to last longer during the season. because that's what you rely on. And Hunter Green actually straight up said that that's the reason why he's been able to go longer this season, even though we're about to talk about the fact that he is also injured. So I guess that's maybe a good point. Maybe we'll do that now, Joe, is we'll just move that up. Hunter Green does go on the IL with right elbow soreness. From what I've heard, they're not actually concerned, even though they did an MRI. I think that was more just for, we're doing it out of precaution. I don't trust this pitching or this training staff though. And if they end up saying that he's fine and he comes back and he tears a freaking ligament, I am going to lose it. I really will. I will be saying, like, I will be calling for their heads. Like big time, like not like they can go work somewhere else. That's fine. Go work in a local, doctor's office or something, but you should not be doing this for professional athletes. If you have messed up this many times, like it's unbelievable to me, especially considering like UC Health and everything. Like I'm sure like the machines and the people that they use for the most part are some of the best in the world. Like they are worldwide known for some of the things that they can do here in Cincinnati with the hospitals that are in, downtown, and they can't even read an MRI report correctly, or they are missing things big time with players. Like, I mean, I just don't even know how you freaking still missed the Matt McLain one. I mean, that was pretty obvious from the start. Like either that or they're just lying to us, the public. It's one of the two. But if this Hunter Green injury turns out to be anything more than actual just right elbow soreness, I'm just gonna collapse, I think, in the middle of a Walmart. That's the
I'm not a doctor. I won't pretend to be one. That's like the one area that I probably know the least about in the world. I think someone was asking me what their beats per minute was for their heart, and I gave them a blood pressure number. So it's just stuff like that. I don't know anything, but I will say the information we're getting is different than what actually happens, and then things change. And I do get there's some nebulousness to medicine, but it's happened a lot. The interesting thing to me with this one is that the MRI looked good, but it's David Bell saying it's too early to say anything definitive on him. So I don't know what that means. To be honest, it's the same old where it's a non-answer. I will, for now, until we see what happens with the possible Hunter Green after this, I will say I'm grateful that the front office is possibly shutting him down for 15 days, even though there's no big issue other than soreness, general soreness, because I would rather look at the future rather than try to make a push for the playoffs and we're 6 games under. So that's what I'll say. I'm happy they're looking out for the future. At least the front office is looking out for the future. And I'm not a doctor, so while I do have some issues with the training staff, I don't know exactly how to address those other than the information is just always different for us.
Yeah, and like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I wanted to make sure that I, didn't just put this out there, but he already had Tommy John 5 years ago. So, look, I'm just going to be honest. Like, if he has a second Tommy John, then we are looking at a full implosion of our pitching staff. It is not great when you have a second Tommy John. The first one, normally you come back stronger, everything's good. I'm just going to hope that maybe this is related to his throwing up in his glove. Maybe they're just trying to protect him from, just being sick all the time. I'm just saying a joke because I literally cannot face the reality of the fact that if Lodolo can't be healthy, Abbott can't get through a season, and Hunter Green has to miss an entire year with Tommy John, like we are enormously screwed at that point. We are in a very, very bad place as a Reds team.
I'm gonna lead Rob in some meditation or something. He's got to settle down with the Tommy John. If it gets to that point, it's just elbow soreness for now. We've seen crazier things, so
I'm just saying it'll probably be fine. But if that is the case, I will genuinely lose it. I will be so sad I can't even describe it to you.
All right, you need to count to 10 right now because we're not thinking about that stuff right now. You're worrying about Hunter Green's shoulder way too much or elbow way too much, and yeah, it's okay. I get it though because it's Reds and our luck, it'll probably happen.
Yeah, that's all that's coming out as is it's generalized Reds Cincinnati fandom anxiety. I will put it at that. It's not just Reds; it is true Cincinnati fandom anxiety. So I'm sure he'll be fine. It is also just sad because this literally ends his Cy Young campaign. Like right here. Like this is it for him. Mm-hmm. So it's just disappointing because I think the way he was pitching, I genuinely think it could have ended up being between him and Chris Sale by the end of the season. I know there are some other names out there that people would like to bring in, but Paul Skeens has fallen off immensely in the last like 2 or 3 weeks. Probably because he's just tired, to be honest with you. But I think that Green was going to be a top 3 potential candidate for the Cy Young, and it's just sad to see that. So anyway, we'll move on. Joe, the Reds made a move this week. We are going to get to the Ellie conversation, Joe, but I think I'm going to save that one for last. The Reds go and they get Amed Rosario. Now, I saw that Amed Rosario was getting DFA'd by the Dodgers. This just shows how good this team is. This man is batting .305 this year, 84 hits and 275 at bats. Not a lot of RBIs or anything. His OPS is solid at a 746. His OPS plus is not bad at a 113, obviously. He doesn't walk necessarily a ton, but he can play a lot of different positions. He can play infield and outfield. He seems like a really nice guy for the Reds to have, to be honest with you, Joe. But I am wondering if this man unfortunately just lost his track to being on a good team with this Reds squad, because and I'll say this much too. I said this with Ty France as well. Like, I don't mind these pickups whatsoever, but for the love of God, you got to actually use these players. Like, the fact that Ty France didn't start in like the first 2 games that he was actually available to me was mind blowing. You go and you pick up Amed Rosario. He better be playing in Toronto today. Like, they picked him up 2 days ago at this point. He missed yesterday's game, fine. But that man had better been on his way to Toronto, sitting in the hotel, waiting for the team to meet everybody. And his name better be on the lineup card tonight, or I'm going to lose it. If I have to watch somebody batting under 200, if Will Benson is out there batting today, and Amed Rosario, the guy who now substantially has the best batting average on the team, not even close, is not playing every single game for the rest of this season, then what are we even doing? What is the point of even picking this man up at that point? So I'm just throwing that out there, Joe. Again, I'm on a tirade this week because I'm just tired of stupid decisions. If you're going to go get a guy who is actually going to be impactful to you, he better well play every damn day. I don't care who you've signed. I don't care who else you're looking at this point. If your goal is to make the playoffs, then you better put your best lineup out there every single day. And that includes right now Ty France and Amed Rosario.
Yeah, I don't know if Ty France I'm still, in and out on. 260 batting average for us, so that's great. I mean, yes, play him all the rest of the league because I want to see how good he is. Not like he's going to help us win games in a different way. But yeah, our first base spot is open for next year, technically, so I would like to see him try to win it. For Rosario, he is going to be the best contact hitter on the team since Matt McLain is unable to play, at least. 275 career hitter, 305 this year with time spent with the Rays and the Dodgers. It was just a number crunch issue. They have so many good players, so many people they're paying that even after acquiring him, they had to crunch the numbers, and he was the odd man out. For us, that's a good thing. I do think that his contact will be something that makes our offense more consistent down the stretch. But at the end of the day, 1-year contract, Rob. So he's done after this year.
Yep.
Unrestricted free agent after the year. So, is it good that we're giving this guy at bats when we could be looking at people who are more a part of our plans for the future? Is there any chance we sign him? I don't know. I mean, I would like to think we can, but our history is not very good in that department. So it is very much if you can sign him to a deal for next year, I like the move. If you can't, then I kind of like, it makes him better, but we're 6 games under 500, so why does that matter type of thing. So excited for him. He's my type of player with the contact. He only has 2 home runs this whole year. He just hits for contact and gets on base, and that's sorely what this team needs. But at what point is it just like too little too late? Or maybe if we had added this guy at the deadline, it would have helped a lot more. But now on August 19th, it's a little bit different.
I will say I don't think it hurts because I think the guys who are going to be getting at bats instead of him are not necessarily important for next year. Again, like, I think the person that this moves a lot of is a guy like a Stu Fairchild or a guy like Will Benson, right? Like, I think your outfield now every day becomes TJ Friedl, Spencer Steer, and Amed Rosario. I think that's just what you do, because I don't need to see any more Stu Fairchild. He's fine. He does his job. I'm not too worried about it. I definitely don't need to see any more Will Benson. I hope that he finds it one day, but we have, he either needs the full reset of the offseason or something else. Like, there's just no reason. Like, he's not, to me at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the only guy who he would be taking at bats from, let me make sure, again, I want to make sure before I speak out of turn here, is a guy like Jake Fraley, maybe, who I watched him this Friday too, and he had just an awful at bat. And Rhys Hines, who has not been hitting anyways and is not going to come up clearly and do anything right now. So I don't think he's taking at bats away from anybody all that important. I think that they are in on this point at trying to win and trying to find their way to relevancy in this playoff hunt. The only thing I will say, Joe, to while I am still out, I don't think they're going to do it. They do have a very easy week this week. A very, in comparison, they have a week where, I'll put it this way. They have a week where if they go 5-1, they're literally at 500 and very much still in the race. I don't know if they'll do that.
So,
but I'm saying that is like, yeah. I'm not trying to like always hold out hope, but I will give you guys some stuff real quick. The Reds played the Blue Jays for 3 games. They're well under 500. The Pirates have been abysmal lately, and you get 4 games with them. Then you face the Athletics at home. They're not a great team either. They're not a bad team compared to what they were in the past, but they're not a great team. You got the Brewers and the Astros and the Mets. You got 1 game with the Braves, and then you have a bad Cardinals team, and I think a below-average Twins team, a below-average Braves team, a below-average Pirates team. You got 2 games against the Guardians, and then 3 against the Cubs. The last 38 games of this season are very, very winnable, to be honest with you. They really are. I could totally see a world where this team finds a way to go, we'll say 24 and 14 even, like, with this schedule. They can. If France continues to hit decently, if Ahmed Rosario comes in and is like that extra glue guy that you need, Ellie's been hitting better, India's been hitting better, Stevenson's been hitting for more power. Like, you need Hunter Green to come back and be healthy. You need Abbott and Lodolo to actually find their way pitching-wise, and you need Carson Spires to be able to, come in and be a starter as well and actually do his job. You need Martinez to continue getting quality starts. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but, like, the path is not impossible for this team, Joe. I will say that. And, again, to the whole Rosario thing, I know he's going to be gone. There's no chance in my mind that they re-sign him, to be honest with you. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But I will say that he is, if he's going to come in and help, and he's not taking at-bats away from anybody that I actually think is really, like, we don't know who they are, so they need those at-bats. Again, unless if it was re-signs, which they clearly are just not going to bring him back up again. So my point of contention here is that's why they maybe shouldn't have done it, is because they are cooked, and because I do want to see those guys get more at bats, because they're under contract with us. So I'd like to either see them build their value so we can trade them this offseason, or at least build up a spot. Now that it is done and we have him, yes, you play him every day. He's batting .265 against righties. He's batting over .300 against lefties. You start him every day, and you try to make your little run here. And if you're David Bell, I mean, you slot him in the line. I don't know who's making the decisions on lineups because it's been very bad this year, but you slot him in the lineup every single day. Now, in terms of competing, this I guess goes into one of our other topics. Mm-hmm. It's for me, it's like a 1% chance. I think actually on ESPN's playoff predictors, it's a 1.3. And because the early schedule here, the right in front of us schedule is a little bit easier, there might be some hope. But there are some good teams down the stretch, and other teams, like divisional teams, like the Cubs and Cardinals. Like, it's cool we beat the Cardinals in the sweep this past week. I don't know how well we match up with them. Like, we should beat them. We just always struggle. We have the Brewers, like you said. So this might, again, maybe it's just like, hey, it's like the Reds doing the low cost thing. Like, he's already under contract, and the season's almost over. How much of his contract do you have to pay out? Not too much. Let's do that instead of actually go invest in this team in the future, or invest in this team for right now getting a star. And obviously that's past time because we can only get players who are DFA'd or on waivers. But that's kind of the thing for me, is that
we can't even build up anyone's value or see if there's anything or put people in different positions like we have been doing by putting like Santiago Espinal. That this kind of, if you have him in, that takes him out of the lineup, which kind of stinks because he's been hitting the ball. Assuming Candelario is a third and Francis a first, whatever you want to do the lineup, that might take him out of the lineup a lot more. So that to me might be the bigger problem, is that it's taking possible value away, taking possible development away from guys like Reese Hines, who we seemingly don't like you said, Rob, which I understand. Like, I don't expect Reese Hines to be a very good pro,
No.
but I would still like to do that rather than have a guy who's going to be here for a month and 10 days and, likely not sign with us. And again, if they sign him, I will eat crow. I'll say, hey, it was good job. We got someone at a low cost. Now we signed him this offseason. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So if you're holding out hope for the Reds to make a run here, great addition. He can help us. He's a very good contact hitter. I love him as a player. The strategy of it, not so sure I like that. But let's have some fun the last month of the season. Again, I have zero expectations, so if they go on a run, I'll be very happy, and I'll be happy to watch a player who can actually, hit the ball consistently, which is something that we have not had. So that's fun.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you again. I have like 1 to 5% hope. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that's like, I just don't think, like, they're not trading Santiago Espinal. I think they love him. I think he makes a lot of sense for this team. I think the only way that they would trade him is if they did sign Amed Rosario for a lot of money, or not a lot of money, but a decent chunk. I would assume he's going to cost. Because the problem is Espinal's actually been hitting this year, and he's a better defender. He's just not as good of a hitter as Rosario has turned out to be. So there's a lot of questions with this team. I was hoping they might put in they might put in the waiver claim on him. I'm glad they did. Like, at least they're trying something. But like, you at this point, it's like, why didn't you do anything at the trade deadline? Like, you're really like just doing waiver guys who you're taking a chance on. This is like half-assed trying at this point. This is the old college try, in my opinion. And I'm gonna want answers this offseason. They have got to do things this offseason. They have got to construct the best roster this Reds team has had since 2014. That's what I want to see. And I'm not counting the 2020 team, the 2021 team. I understand Bauer and Castellanos were awesome during those time periods, but I still think that team was wildly as inconsistent as this team is. I want to see consistency. Go find consistency. I actually don't even care as much if they go and they find a star. I would love for that. That'd be great. But if they can find somebody who can be freaking consistent with the rest of this team, then I think that will do even more. Like, a guy like Rosario, honestly, Joe, would be a welcome addition for next season. If he can be a consistent above 280 hitter, especially during a time period when all batting averages are like 20 points down compared to previous years. So I don't give a shit if he hits home runs. I don't care at all at this point, to be honest with you. I just want to see a guy who can get on base.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's all I've wanted from this lineup all year. But like, I do think, however they construct the lineup, I want to see as many at bats for Ty France, for Espinal, for Candelario, and for Noelvi Marte, because that first and third base spot has to be. We have to figure out what that's going to be. And yes, we don't really know what CES is going to be, like we talked about last week, Rob. But we have to figure out, is Espinal going to start at third base and Marte going to come off the bench? Is Marte going to figure it out? He's doing a little bit better here and there. We have to figure out what that's going to look like next season to figure out who to sign. Is Spencer Steer going to move back to third base because we signed another outfielder? Is Rosario going to play outfield so Steer moves to third base and then Espinal's a backup and Ty France is up first and we trade Candelario? We have so many moving pieces between first, third, and possibly like left field with Rosario, and Steer. That's what I want to see. These guys fight for their positions and see who's going to be that guy for next year. And adding Rosario doesn't help add to that number. But again, if they can sign him, I'm on board for next year. And maybe that's the thing, is like, hey, we'll bring him in for a month, see if he likes it, see if we can get him on a cheap deal, which I really don't think is going to happen. But if that happens, that's great. I am very concerned for next season about the first and third base spots. And those are the things I want to figure out for next season.
I completely agree. I think let's not forget, too, I mean, if Indy keeps hitting, maybe McLean moves to third base. So something else to keep in mind as well. All right. We got one more thing to talk about here, Joe, before we head into the predictions for the week. Bobby Witt Jr., like I said, I just watched him in person. He's awesome. Very good player. Elly De La Cruz is a very similar type of player in my mind. Ellie's a little bit faster, obviously. But here's what I am trying to make the comparison of, because Bobby Witt has now catapulted himself into the MVP discussion. He did last year as well. I have seen odds with Elly De La Cruz's name as a top 10 MVP candidate this season, which is wild to me. I think deserved, to be honest with you. But I wanted to look at their jumps between seasons specifically. In 2022, Bobby Witt Jr. was 22 years old, 20 home runs, 254 batting average, Rookie of the Year 4th. His OPS was 722. Elly De La Cruz, 13 home runs, 235 batting average, 710 OPS, 7th Rookie of the Year. Last year, Bobby Witt Jr., 30 home runs, almost 50 stolen bases, 276 batting average, 813 OPS, finishes 7th in the MVP voting. Elly De La Cruz, this year, on pace for close to 30 home runs this year. Obviously has way surpassed the stolen bases of Bobby Witt Jr. of last year. A 259 batting average, very similar. Actually a better OPS at 826. And All-Star this year, which Bobby Witt Jr. was not last year. And Joe will probably, as long as he continues to raise his batting average and steal bases and do all these fun things that he's doing outside of his defense, which will need to get fixed, which Bobby Witt Jr. was struggling a little bit with defense last year as well. Elly should potentially be in the MVP discussion, at least a top 10 vote getter, most likely. Bobby Witt Jr. has popped off in his age 24 season, so 2 full years older than our boy Elly. But he is leading the league right now with 173 hits, 107 runs scored. He's got 25 home runs. He'll likely hit 30 again this year. He's got a 350 batting average after slaughtering Cincinnati. His OPS is over 1,000 right now. He's an all-star. He is likely, in my mind, going to win the MVP this season. It'll be between him and Judge in the AL, in my mind, but I would give it to Bobby Witt personally because he also hasn't really missed any time this season. He'll finish playing almost every single game this year. He is leading the league in games played, by the way, as well. I am going to posit this, Joe. I think that Elly's going to make a similar jump next year. I don't know that he's going to bat 350, to be clear. I just think he strikes out too much for that to happen. I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. hasn't even struck out 100 times this year, and Elly has double the amount of strikeouts that Bobby Witt does. Over double, actually. So, by 1, but whatever. Do you think this is a fair comparison to make? Do you think that Elly can have a season next year where he's batting close to 300, like 290, 280, 30-plus home runs, maybe driving in more runs? That's one thing I would have liked to have seen him do a little bit more of this year, and make a real run at being a true MVP next year.
Yeah, not in the same way Witt's doing it. They are similar players and they have a lot of tools and they're playing the same positions. But, Witt is a guy who can hit for contact, which is, partly why I love him and why I'm standing him over Aaron Judge, even though Aaron Judge leads the league in slugging percentage, on base, home runs, all that. Last week, I think he should be MVP. It'll look different. I think Elly can be better at the stats that are maybe more power and speed. So like home runs and stolen bases, even though Bobby Witt can hit for power and can steal bases. But that average is the thing I'm still worrying about. Leading the league in strikeouts, I'm not sure he can get it to like 300. Maybe he can be 275. And he's still a great player if he gets 275 next year. Or even 280. But I think he's going to be maybe a little bit far away from 300. Now, what can change that? Keep on working on his approach at the plate. Obviously, having teammates who can actually hit around him would help him with his RBIs.
Yep.
And it would also give him more protection, so maybe he gets his average up. But they're different. Like, they're very similar in some of the things they do, but they're different in that regard. Whereas Bobby Witt might be a full 5-tool player, whereas Elly, that contact is like, it's good that he's up to 259, but I'm not sure he's that player. I know we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, Rob. He might be more of like at the plate, more of a Jose Ramirez free swinger, strikeout, but have a lot of production and be a very good player. And that's where the difference is, which, is great. They can both be superstars, but he can definitely, even with that, if he bats 275 with, let's say he goes up to 35 home runs and 100 RBIs, you're in the MVP discussion. So from a broad strokes effort, which is the question you asked, yes, he can move into the MVP discussions. He's already kind of there, but obviously he's going to have to help himself a little bit down the stretch because his teammates aren't getting on base with his RBIs. I think that the only thing that can hold him back is that he could be the victim of the same thing Bobby Witt is, which is like Aaron Judge is in New York. I get a lot of the votes because little old Kansas City over there, no one cares about that. So
Yeah.
Ellie could be the victim of a small market thing, but I do think he can take that jump. It just might look different as in 40 home runs and 120 RBIs and 275 batting average rather than 350 batting average and leading the league in hits and leading the league in runs. So that's kind of like the thing I would say is like potential to look different.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's a real world where Elly De La Cruz has a season where he is truly the best player on the planet. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know exactly when that'll happen, but I'd bet you in the next 5 years that Elly De La Cruz ends up being a close to 300 hitter. Maybe not consistently, but for one season, I could totally see him doing that. I think he'll consistently be closer to what you're talking about, but I could totally see him having one season where he just pops off and has that kind of MVP. Because, like, again, I think him raising... If he didn't have such a horrific start to the season, I think he'd be batting close to 275, 280 this year. I think he'd have not even close to the most strikeouts in the league because he's really toned that down a lot since like June, I want to say. At least from what I could tell. I felt like he was striking out 2 times a game even when he was getting 2 hits. Now it's like he's making more contact, and I think that he has that potential to do that. So we will have to see, Joe. He's also walking a lot more this year too, to give him, I think, his due. So it'll be interesting. I could easily see if this team was better, I could already see him batting closer to 275 this year, honestly, even with the bad start. Just because I think, it would be easier. He'd be getting more pitches to hit. I think he'd probably have closer to 25 home runs. I think he'd be probably already at like 90 runs scored this year. Like he is matured so much quicker than I thought he would, and his work ethic is apparently amazing. So I would love to see it happen. I think it can, and I'm honestly, dude, I'm so excited to see what he can do next. Like I think watching Bobby Witt Jr., I sat there and I went, Elly is different for sure, but I can see him making a similar type of jump that Bobby Witt did to really reach his full potential, potentially a lot earlier than we thought as well. Like I thought he'd be like 25, 26, like, which is still very young for a baseball player, but before we'd start seeing what he's doing right now, and he's already doing it, and he's not even 23 years old yet. So it's wild to me what he is doing.
Yeah, you mentioned that consistency. Like he's shown in short stretches he could be a guy who can get up to 300 and do that. It's the bad months. So like April and March, 279 average. Great. That's awesome. July he has a 299 batting average. But then he has in May 208. And this month he's 242, and then in June he was 266, which is right in the middle, right where around his average has been for a lot of the year, or for a lot of the last couple months. So that's kind of where you just want to see him level things out. If he bats 220 in May, and maybe bats in August, maybe bats 250, maybe his average is up to 265, 270, and I do think he can get better. I do think he can be 275, 280. He's got to cut down on the strikeouts, but work ethic is there. I think he's still got to fix his swing a little bit if he wants to cut down on the strikeouts. But if they want him to be a power hitter, a pull hitter in this ballpark, especially from the left-handed side of the plate, then maybe he will always be a strikeout guy who hits for power. A lot of it's going to be on the hitting coach and the philosophy moving forward as well. It's not just his mechanics. It's not just anything else. It's just, what are we asking him to do? Is it, hey, we want you to be Roger Maris and pull the ball to right field all the time and never hit for average, even though he did actually hit for pretty good average even for his time? Or is it, hey, we want you to be an all-around player. We want you to do everything. That's going to be a big, I think, debate for the manager next year and the hitting coach next year, if that's the same person or someone different.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. All right, let's move on to our last segment here. Blue Jays. We're heading up to Toronto, where we were all hoping that maybe we'd see Joey Votto. That seems like that is unlikely to happen unless they just bring him up to have fun. Starting lineup looks something like this. George Springer, Ernie Clement, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Alejandro Kirk, Spencer Horwitz, Addison Berger, Davis Schneider, Joey Loperfido, Brian Serven, Leo Jimenez, I'm trying to see who else I haven't named here, Dalton Varsho, Will Wagner. Joe, this Blue Jays team has been a disappointment, other than the fact that Vlad found himself. He was not doing very well, and then he has gone on an absolute tear. He is another guy who has made, I think, a very big stride. He has cut down on the strikeouts significantly. He has refound his power. He went from being a guy who a lot of people thought that they'd have to sell low on to a guy who is, I think, hitting the absolute crap out of the ball. They got rid of guys like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who was hitting pretty well as well. Bo Bichette has been hurt on and off this year. Kevin Kiermaier is retiring and is gone as well. Springer's been pretty bad, honestly, this year. It's just not been great for them. The starting pitching that they thought was going to be really good this year as well has kind of not done what they expected it to. Even when they finally got Alek Manoah back and he was doing decently, he got hurt. So it's just not been a very good year for this team. I forgot, I will say their closer has been a committee of guys, but Jordan Romano and Chad Green have split the time, but I believe it's mostly been Chad Green lately. He is 13 of 13 saves. So where are you at with this team, Joe? What are your predictions for how we will do against them up in Canada?
Yeah, it's a disappointing season for them. It started with Vlad. I know we talked at the deadline. They were maybe thinking about trading him. I'm probably glad they didn't. He is a superstar. He refound himself. He leads the Blue Jays in every single offensive category you could want: batting average, home runs, RBI, on base percentage, hits, just like Bobby Witt Jr. So that quantifies to me as a superstar. Mm-hmm. They were a team that was constructed with a bunch of young talent, and some of it didn't work out. They traded guys away, and I think they filled the void with too many guys who were like over the hill or kind of on the downward trend on their careers. That's what I think probably is doing them. Like we mentioned, like they've had guys like George Springer, Justin Turner, guys who their best days are probably behind them. And Kevin Kiermaier, as you mentioned, is gone now. Like he's retiring after the year. So I think it was just maybe they went from like this ultra youth movement to like going too old. I think if they got more players in their prime to help, they could be a better team. But they're also in a tough division where the Orioles are a wagon. The Yankees are always well financed. The Red Sox are playing better than people would have expected this year with the roster they had. And the Rays are always doing their work with the young guys. So for me, this is all about Guerrero. I don't care if you walk him every time in this series. If you want to win, you do. He's just too good, and there's no one else on this team that really scares me. On a consistent basis, at the very least, there's some guys who can hit some home runs, including George Springer with 14 this year. But that, to me, is what I'm watching is, like, let's avoid him and make sure he doesn't kill us. And I also, like you said with the starting pitching, they're not great. They are beatable. They're a beatable team, even though they have this superstar athlete. I'm going to say 1-2. I've been going 1-2 for a lot of series. I'm probably going to keep that up. Just on the road, a guy this good, I don't know where the Reds' head is at, I think is the biggest thing. You just came off of an emotional 3-0 sweep. Then you go to an 0-3 getting swept at home. Now you go up to Canada. Again, a team has a little bit of talent. They're just in a tough division. So I'll go 1-2. I think they could easily go 2-1 or even sweep the series if they do what they're supposed to do. But I have long since thought the Reds will do what they're supposed to do this year.
Yeah, so they'll be getting Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, and I forget what Rodriguez's name is. So we are getting their three best, and we don't even know who we are going to be starting in either of the first two games right now. I would have to assume Carson Spires is going to get one of those starts, and they may do another bullpen game with Hunter Green, going on the IL. To be fair, it looks like Hunter's only going to miss 2 starts because they backdated, his IL stint. So we'll have to see what happens. Joe, it sounds stupid, but I'm going to go 2-1. I think they are going to find something in themselves. I don't know who's going to do it for them, but I think somebody's going to step up and be like, guys, we can do this. This is a week where they can make up a lot of ground. A lot of other teams are still playing some very tough schedules throughout the rest of the year. I don't think the Reds necessarily have a huge schedule, a very difficult schedule, I should say. So I just want to see them make the jump. I want to see them. I want to see them try. I mean, this will be probably my last week of much hope, even though it's very low hope. Like I said, old friend Kevin Gossman, who literally revived his career thanks to the Reds. Barrios is definitely beatable. He has not turned into the ace they thought he was, and Rodriguez has struggled at times as well. And he'll be going up against Nick Martinez, who I think has actually pitched extremely well this year. So, like you said, if you pitch around Vlad, I think you can beat this team. They have been showing that. Like, a lot of people have been doing that as of late. So, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go 2-1. We're going to move on now to the Pirates. Joe. Pittsburgh lineup. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, Joey Bart, Rowdy Tellez, Brian De La Cruz, Michael A. Taylor, Ji-Hwan Bae, and Jared Triolo. They've got, and then Key Brian Hayes, obviously, as well, though he's been in and out of the lineup at different points this year. And Yasmani Grandal has also been getting some time behind the plate. And one of your favorite players, Andrew McCutchen, as well, makes up most of this team. And Connor Joe. I don't know if I said Connor Joe, but yeah, him as well. Look, this team is interesting, Joe. Isaiah or Kiner-Falefa has been hitting pretty well since coming over into trade deadline acquisition. The Pirates did make some moves. They also got Brian De La Cruz. Joe, he is he's 11 for 56. He has not had an extra base hit yet for the team since coming over. Players like O'Neill Cruz have fallen off. Brian Hayes is having an awful season, honestly. Nick Gonzalez is a pretty good bat for them, but I believe he might be hurt right now. Jack Sawinski has fallen off pretty substantially as well. They just sent Edward Olivares down. Some of their pickups have been pretty decent. Like Joey Bart has worked out for them. It looks like Kiner-Falefa might be an interesting piece for them. Brian Reynolds is still their best player for sure. And then obviously we know they're pitching, but they just went on a 10-game losing streak. Mitch Keller has not been very good as of lately. Bailey Falter has been struggling. Jared Jones hasn't been great. Martin Perez, since they brought him over, hasn't been very good. And Paul Skeens has been getting lit up over his last few starts, Joe. And when I say lit up, I mean for his standards. He's as close to a 3 ERA over his last 7 games, but very specifically, he has given up at least 2 earned runs which for him is a big deal, but at least 2 earned runs in looks like 4 of his last 7 starts. So he is starting to find a little bit of a chink in the armor. I think it's just because it's getting late into the season, but his ERA has gone up 0.4 in the last 3 games. So hopefully we won't end up having to face him. But where are you at with this Pirates team? A lot of people thought they were going to be better, but they have stopped hitting. They have stopped pitching very well, and they are just getting the snot beat out of them over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think this team was carried by a couple stars. Mitch Keller and Paul Skeens and Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz, and then they added some guys to the mix, but I think they're just getting tired, man. Like that's the way I'd put it, is like they've been outkicking their coverage all year, and then they get to a point in August where they start losing 10 games in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10 starts. I'm going to go 2-1 in the series. I think the Pirates they've done a admirable job trying to add to this roster at the deadline. They got some pitching help. They got Brian De La Cruz, as you mentioned. I think the Reds can go 500 this week. It is 2 bad teams. If I'm going to pick 1 and 2 against the Blue Jays up in Canada, I will say 2-1 against the Pirates. I'm going
to let you make one change. They play 4 games, not 3.
4 games. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, you're right. So I'll go 2-2 then. I'll keep it 2-2. Okay. I do think they can win 2 games though. They have, like I said, a lot of these guys I think are just kind of getting tired out. They're carrying the team too long. My boy Andrew McCutchen's been hurt recently. He's one of the 4 qualifying hitters they have on the whole roster. He's a 235. Good story for him to go back to Pittsburgh, but I don't know. I think this is a team that is clearly just getting tired. Just like we said with Andrew Abbott, just going to fade down the stretch. It's kind of what this team is as a whole to me.
Well, and that's what they've been for years. It feels like they get that hot start, and then they just fall off the face of the planet after April. The opposite of what we were hoping we would be, but we will have to see. You're absolutely right. Like, it does feel like they have faded substantially. I'm gonna go 3-1 because of that. To be honest with you, I think the Reds are still going to be at least a little bit, like, if nothing else, hopefully this team has some bit of ego, because the last series against the Pirates was, how would I say, forgettable. Right? This was back in June. Yeah, we went 2-4 in those two series against them. We've got this, I think we have two more this year. Let me make sure before I say it. We got this one and one more at home. That's right. So if this team, if we can find a way to be 500 against the Pirates by the end of the season, I think that would be helpful. I think we're catching them at a really good time, to be honest with you. It feels like they are falling out pretty substantially. As of right now, they are 7.5 games out of the wild card. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games, Joe. They've got negative 31 run differential. Like, there's just a lot of things that are not going well for them. They are pretty much about as good as we are against teams at over 500. So it's just they're not very good either. But I think maybe this Reds team will find a way to go 5-2 this weekend, which would put them to one game under 500 and probably maybe 3.5, 4 games out, depending on how things go. We'll have to see with the Mets and the Braves specifically. I'm kind of counting the Giants, Cardinals, and Cubs out of it, to be honest with you. But we'll see. One of these teams are going to make a run towards the Braves. We'll have to see who it's going to be. Hopefully it'll be our Redlegs. Again, Joe and I are out, to be clear. I know I may not sound like I am. I'm just trying to be realistic. I do think this team will fight to the end. I don't know that they'll make the playoffs, but I do think that they will at least give it a good shot, a good show, Joe, of going over 500 for the season, to at least be like, hey, with all the injuries and everything else that went wrong for us this year, at least we finished with a similar record as to last year, so maybe next year will be better. That's where my hope lies, Joe. Not in them making the playoffs, but showing us something to get us hopeful yet again for next year. So
getting our hopes up to bring it back down next year. I love it. All right.
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm at. But yeah, guys, we appreciate it as always. We know these go a little long, but hopefully you guys enjoy the good back and forth that I know. Again, we had something that we weren't even planning on talking about with the starting pitchers and the injuries, but I think it was a good conversation. So let us know what you guys think of it. And thanks for all of you who are listening as well on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. But Joe, I think that'll do it for us. So you got any wise words before we head out?
Yeah, definitely appreciate everyone. I'm sure these episodes will be shorter down the stretch because we're going to already said everything we need to say, but I appreciate everyone sticking with us. There's still a lot to talk about with the Reds. One final thought here. Mentioned that one of the things I was looking for at the end of the season was any prospects who might show some real potential. I'm a big Cam Collier guy. He's having a huge month, which is good because it's actually making his season better. It was kind of a down season for him, but he's on a tear. You can go look up his monthly stats, but his overall stats, 249 average, which is up from where it was, 15 home runs, and then an OPS of 780. So we love to see him coming through. 19 years old, third baseman, currently playing for the Dayton Dragons. We don't know where he's going to play in a couple of years, and possibly if he helps this team. But for a farm system that desperately needed guys to step up because we were ranked in the bottom half of the league after the trade deadline, it was very good to see him have a good month so far in August.
Yeah, we love that. I think the Reds have a lot of young guys that can make some pretty serious noise here over the next few years as well. I think that the rankings for the Reds farm system, to be honest, are a little, I'm going to just say straight up incorrect based on some of the things that they have done. I know they've graduated a lot of prospects. I think it's more just the fallout from the hype with the young players that have come up more so than the players that they have down there right now. But we will have to see. We will have to see if that ends up being right. So, yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for us here, guys. So with that, we'll catch you on the next one.